And I've got a Tamara Lich and Chris Barber trial update for you. There's lots to get to, so let's get to it. First, I think this is probably going to be the thumbnail, but this is a pensive Trudeau looking questioningly at, I don't know, some portrait or something to that effect. And Andrew Coyne, who is a Liberal acolyte, he says the bottom has suddenly fallen out of Liberal support. Why? Why? What could it possibly? Nobody can afford rent. Nobody can afford food. Nobody can afford gas. We're being told that taxes are going up. We're being told that we're racist. Do you want me to go on? That's just off the top of my head. And I would say maybe top 5, but there are other more pressing issues. It's like you've got a patient on the emergency room table. They're in the hospital. He's maybe got his arm cut off and there's blood coming out of the arm and nobody's addressing this. They're like, should we get him a manicure on this other hand that he's still got over here? That'll really make his hand pop. And I'm looking at the blood they're losing and thinking the patient's going to die. And that's what's happening in Canada with the immigration. We're not stopping the bleeding. And so all of the problems that they say they're trying to address with building homes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it's window dressing. It's like putting a nice suit on somebody who's about to pass out or die in the emergency room, right? Like, oh, well, get the suit on him. That'll fix him right up. No, that's not going to. What? What kind of crazy talk is this, right? And so it is absolutely bonkers that this is acceptable. It's not a plan. It's not a plan. It's not a plan. It's not a plan for anything. So why is the Liberals' support suddenly dropping? Cheapers creepers. I can't put my finger on it. I just don't know. Here is Justin Trudeau in not Canada, where people want to take pictures with him. Here we go. I guess there's no audio. Here's one picture, and then the guy tries to get another one, and he pushes the camera out of the way, which I thought was kind of funny. And yeah, he's just standing there, lining up, hugging people, taking pictures, selfies with people. It's very interesting. They're really interested in having a picture with Justin Trudeau. I guess in Indonesia, it's where he stopped on his way to India. He's very popular. Here he is, dressing up as usual in a loud shirt and jeans. So, I guess it's not the full garb, which small mercies, right? But the ASEAN Indonesian 2023 thing that they're at, I guess this was a pre-G7 conference. You got to wonder, like if you're I don't know, car company or any kind of like international company, a big company like Ford, the Ford Motor Company or something like that, right? If you're running things, and a country is like a big company, essentially. You have to manage things. You've got like a manager of the sales department. And if your sales dip, you call them up and say, hey, man, like your job is the sales department. And yesterday the sales were, 1,000 units. And today the sales are, 800 units or whatever. We've got a problem, right? And then you talk to your manager, and the manager fixes the problem, hopefully, and your sales return to normal. You've got a whole bunch of different people. You got a marketing department, right? Like the marketing, we're bringing in this many leads. Now they're not bringing in any leads. What's going on? That's like, you're supposed to run the country like a company. I think that was the point, right? You're not supposed to just jet set and have international conferences, but that's what these people do. Oh, we've got to have the pre-G20 conference with all the small countries so we can feel important, and then we'll go to the G20 so we feel even more important, and then we'll come home and we'll govern for a while. Like, what? It seems out of step with how you would actually do things. But if you were a big governmental, if you were a big company like Ford, you're not going to these meetings. You're governing the company, right? Like the CEO of Ford, I don't think is jet setting around talking to other CEOs of other car companies going, what are you guys doing? You guys are doing that? Okay, I guess we'll do that too. How did you bust your unions? They're just making phone calls. They're like, listen, we got this union problem. We gotta take it out. What do? You wait for the lease to expire, and then you shut down the company that has the part of the company that has the union, and then you reopen it somewhere else without the union. Done. And it's happened multiple times. Here's another picture of Justin Trudeau at the ASEAN with his son. And it's weird. Is it weird? How many other G7 leaders? Are there G7 leaders at the ASEAN? Are there other G20 leaders who are bringing their kids, right? I really don't know. That's a genuine question. That guy looks young. No, maybe not. Maybe not. I was comparing to the older woman, but if I were to guess, the gentleman in the hat is like Trudeau's age. He's just not very tall. Trudeau's son is taller than Trudeau, but these two don't have their kid, right? Maybe their kid's an adult. Still. How many other leaders are plus oneing with their teenager? right? I mean, it's a unique experience for Justin Trudeau's kid and all of that, but it seems weird. Okay. Let's talk about interference, foreign interference, Chinese interference. Oh, hold on a second. Trudeau suggests he would raise the issue of foreign interference with India's Prime Minister Modi. Hours before he was set to board a flight to New Delhi on Friday, Prime Minister Trudeau had not yet secured a meeting with India's Prime Minister Modi. But he suggested that if he does end up meeting with Modi during his visit to India for the G20 Leaders Summit this weekend, he would bring up the issue of foreign interference in Canada. As always, we will emphasize how important the rule of law is. Trudeau said Friday at a news conference in Singapore when asked what he would say to Modi about allegations that India has engaged in foreign meddling, including in relation to the large Sikh population in Canada. Trudeau, whose Liberal government announced a public inquiry into allegations of foreign interference on Thursday, went on to say that China is not the only country deserving of scrutiny. They want to water it down. They don't want it to be about the specific instance that Canadians have and have genuine, valid questions about, because CSIS is leaking, hey, did you know China influenced our elections with money and purposely and were successful? That's what we're talking about. Not this fictional, oh, everybody's interfering in other people's elections, blah, 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 blah. If you've got something that's not fictional, then put it out there and say, this is what we're investigating. But it seems muddy and vague, and it seems that way on purpose to me. Back to this. It's incredibly important that we continue to protect Canadians from any and all types of interference. Right. I don't believe them. Trudeau said Friday morning. One of the things that we're focused on in this inquiry is recognizing, yes, China and Russia are responsible for interference, but other countries engage in it as well, he said, adding the commission of, we will go with the facts, bring them. Yeah, right. What kind of facts? Whose facts are you talking about here? I scroll down a bit. This will be Trudeau's first trip to India since his controversial visit in 2018. At the time, Modi appeared to ignore Trudeau's presence entirely until the final days of the 10-day visit. This short trip to India is for the G20 leaders meeting in New Delhi, where Trudeau is set to focus on climate change, food, energy security, and gender equality. Yowza, right? Like that's the people who represent us to foreign countries. That's what they think Canada and Canadians are focusing on and finding important. That's a little ridiculous, I think. Let's talk about the inquiry judge who's been appointed by Trudeau. Her name is Marie-Josie Hogue. And she's a Quebec judge, and she's tapped by Trudeau to run the Beijing interference inquiry. In 1987, she began her legal career at Heenan Blakey, a law firm founded by Roy Heenan, who also served as the first chairman of the Trudeau Foundation. Ha! While serving at the firm, she worked alongside Pierre Trudeau, who worked there after his retirement from politics. So there you go. I mean, a liberal insider through and through, which is exactly what I said yesterday. 100%. Yesterday, Dan Knight was going through the Bank of Canada interest rate conundrum. The fact that if they raised rates and they didn't raise rates, that people wouldn't be able to afford their houses. But we're already at that point, I think, which is why they didn't raise rates. But if they don't raise rates, and the United States does raise rates, which that's rumored, probable, likely, then our dollar will lose value, and that will cause other problems. But in response to this, Vesper says, great post, Dan. Do you think you could look into this? And Vesper says, they found a judge for foreign interference, Marie-Josie Hogue, who once again worked for a law firm that was home to the Trudeaus. Unbelievable. Is no one going to address this? Was she on the board of the Trudeau Foundation also? And so this is just the write-up. And it says she was previously a partner with the Heenan Blakey law firm, which is exactly what I just told you. But there's more proof. And then this person has more cases. He says, more interesting cases. In 2017, Hogue was part of a 3-judge panel that upheld a lower court ruling that found the Quebec government's language laws to be constitutional. In 2018, Hogue was part of a 3-judge panel that overturned a lower court ruling that had found the Canadian government's environmental assessment process to be flawed. In 2019, Hogue was part of a 3-judge panel that upheld a lower court ruling that found that the Quebec government's Bill 21, which bans public sector workers from wearing religious symbols, to be constitutional. So there you go. From wearing something entirely, you're banned. You're banned. Here's Atomic Blonde, and she says, a new judge has been chosen by the federal government to lead a public inquiry into the allegations of foreign interference in Canadian elections and society. Marie-Josie Hogue was previously a partner with Heenan Blakey. And who is it, Heenan Blakey? It's none other than the law firm Justin Trudeau hired to explain his sudden departure from West Point Grey Academy. Nothing to see here, folks. Move along. move along. Oh, I just love those little extra ripples or those little extra riffles. It's like having like the bow curled on a Christmas present, right? Like, ooh, it's just that little detail right there. That's nice. Isn't it amazing, right? We've got to have an agreement, a memorandum of understanding that there will be absolutely no disclosure of what happened here, right? Here's Senator Denise Batters, and she's talking about the problems inherent with the Trudeau Foundation. This is an 8-minute video. I'll show you the intro to the video, the teaser. The link is in the description if you're interested in watching that. Here we go.
What does political power look like?
Think about it. There's enormous opportunity and enormous potential in that realization.
If you could see political power, it would be this brown, unassuming building on a downtown street in Ottawa. Behind these doors, decisions worth hundreds of billions of dollars and decisions that impact the lives of millions of people and Canada's relations with foreign powers are made every day. When they say the halls of power, these are the halls. For some elites and special interests, getting through these doors and getting that money and influence is the only thing that matters. What's good for the country, what's good for Canadians, those considerations are second and a distant third. Power, money, and influence is the name of the game for them. There's a saying, who do you know in the PMO? Under the Trudeau government, the concentration of power and influence has evolved. It's more complicated. The PMO uses outside organizations and a series of appointments to prominent positions to help keep Trudeau and his Liberal government in office. This is a story about an organization that shares the same name as the Prime Minister. This is a story about how it began getting a lot of cash from foreign donors. At the same time, a seeming straight line of appointments and political influence appeared between the Trudeau Foundation and the Trudeau government. The implications of this are extraordinary. This is a story about the Trudeau Foundation.
So, I mean, people who have associations with the Trudeau Foundation, people who work in law firms that are in the orbit of the Trudeau Foundation, so on and so forth, problems arise and coincidences happen and so on and so forth. I mean, have they given back that donation to the donor that they didn't know who it was, right? It was given by somebody, but then it was actually on someone else's behalf and they couldn't give it back to the original person, so on and so forth. The Chinese interference is one problem. The use of foundations for selling influence is another. The Clinton Foundation is another example of this. Hunter Biden is another example of this. It happens everywhere, and it's incredible that the powers that be are doing this so flagrantly. They're doing this arrogantly in your face. They're just walking around. It's like they think, and maybe correctly so, that they're insulated so much that they can smoke crack, leave a laptop at repair shop, have the repair shop realize all the evidence they've got. The evidence can get out into the public and they can say, yeah, fine. Have you seen any of the Hunter Biden stuff? It's crazy. It's crazy. If somebody like me or somebody that the government didn't like had Trump's kids, had that kind, like me, I'm not a big enough fish, I don't think, but like somebody like Trump's kids, if Trump's kid was doing half of the stuff that Hunter Biden's kid was doing, crush, absolute crush, right? But these people are selling influence, are insulating themselves. They're getting foreign prosecutors who are looking into things and getting too close to things fired. They're doing all sorts of, they're censoring free speech. They're watering down Western society. They're doing all sorts of crazy things. It's a coordinated attack. I don't think there's any other conclusion to come to. And it's incredible. And the funny thing is people don't see it. It's right in front of your face and people look past it and they're like, ooh, did you know there's chocolate milk today? And it's like, what? I heard on the radio, like it's ice cream day or it's tall friends day or, it's orange underwear day or something stupid. And my kids said, oh, it's donut day, like whatever the radio was talking. And generally I don't have the radio on, but I think I got into like somebody else's car and the radio was on and I had to change it. And I said, no, it's not donut day. I said, that's like, this is a contrived way to sell donuts. And I took all the joy out of Donut Day for my children. But it's ridiculous. It is a distraction from the actual issues of the country. And it just gets people to look past what is right in front of their face. And it's masterful in its simplicity because you just say, those people are crazy. And you're like, they're clearly not. RCMP, let's talk about China, but in a bit of a different light. This is like turning the kaleidoscope just a little tiny bit. This isn't exactly foreign interference in our elections. This isn't exactly Chinese interference in our elections, but it's something similar. Here's True North reporting. RCMP investigating former Royal Canadian Air Force, RCAF pilots training Chinese military. Yeah, but it's fine. Don't worry, they say. The Globe and Mail says. We'll get there in a sec. Canadian security officials have raised alarms about the 3 former Royal Canadian Air Force pilots who are helping to train pilots in China's People Liberation Army. After security officials reached out to the pilots who are currently working for a South African flight academy fulfilling a contract in China, they referred the matter to the RCMP, who've confirmed they're conducting an investigation. Don't worry, everybody. The RCMP are investigating. Because, I mean, just look at what happened in Nova Scotia, right? Like that RCMP investigation was totally right. Don't worry, everybody. Here's the Globe and Mail article about this. The RCMP are investigating 3 former RCAF fighter pilots who are training military and civilian pilots in China, even though their employer, a South African flying academy, insists no sensitive information is being passed to Chinese authorities. Don't worry. The work the 3 pilots are doing in China has also come under scrutiny from Canadian security officials who reached out to the former Top Guns in late August. The Department of National Defense says it referred the matter to the RCMP. The RCMP is aware of the report of former RCAF pilots taking part in training People's Liberation Army Force pilots. As the RCMP is investigating these incidents, there will be no further comment on this matter at this time. RCMP spokesperson Robin Percival told the Globe and Mail in a statement, the Globe and Mail contacted former RCAF pilot Paul Yu to seek comment on speculation in Canada's aviation community that he and 2 other former fighter pilots, Craig Sharp and David Monk, have been teaching flying skills in China. Mr. Yu did not reply, but instead forwarded the email to his employer, Test Flying Academy of South Africa, which is based in the western town of Oudtshoorn. Edward Lee, a spokesperson for TFASA, confirmed that Mr. Yu and Mr. Sharp and Mr. Monk are under contract to train pilots in China, adding that the company would speak for its employees. In fact, it issued several statements to address questions. Here they are. Training always involves unclassified procedures, and materials are derived either from open source or from the clients themselves. The training TFASA provides never includes information about NATO, Mr. Lee said. TFASA has strict protocols and a code of conduct in place that are designed to prevent any TFASA employee sharing any information on or training that is or might be considered to be legally or operationally sensitive or security classified. The issue of Western military pilots instructing Chinese students arose late last fall after British media reported as many as 30 former UK Top Guns were working as instructors. Okay, so like if you are a Top Gun pilot trained at the Top Gun Canada School, wherever that is, probably Vancouver. I mean, it's not in Halifax, right? So if you're that person and you then retire from the RCIF and like that training is in your head, it's like karate, right? It's like punch that wall. And so you punch the wall like you've been trained to punch the wall. Fly that plane. You fly that plane like you were a Top Gun pilot. And so if you're then taken to teach the Chinese, I understand the irony of the karate analogy here. But if you're taken to China to teach the Chinese karate and you punch that wall, right? You fly that plane like you've been trained to fly that plane. Wouldn't just the act of punching the wall betray your training, betray the top level training that you've had? Like you fly that plane, man. Okay, well, we never do that because of this, right? In Top Gun, the movie, as I am not a Top Gun pilot, they talk about the egg and about how moving up and down in the space is like you can, I can't remember exactly what he was trying to relay, but you can use that to be faster for some reason. I couldn't remember that, but like it's little things like that, right? Things like that you might not know unless you were instructed by Top Gun or watched Top Gun the movie a little bit more closely than I did. And so I worry that just the act of engaging in the training is violating some kind of level of top secret classification just by virtue of being there and flying that plane for those people and saying, yeah, well, we don't do that. We do this. Why? Well, reasons. Some guy told me one time, wink, right? Like But it's Canada, so some they told me one time. In June, back to the article. In June, the U.S. government targeted TFASA by imposing export controls on it and other companies for allegedly providing training to Chinese military pilots using Western and NATO sources. This activity is contrary to U.S. national security and foreign policy interests, the U.S. Department of Commerce said at the time. Here's one example, just very quickly. I was watching Mayday. I think it was Mayday. Do you know this show, Mayday? Don't ever watch it if you're afraid of flying. I used to watch it far too often in the early 2000s. It was on all the time on TLC. That was channel 37, and I worked in a place that was like a house, and somebody was always watching TLC, and it was often left on, and the staff would watch it. Anyway, Mayday all the time. And one of the guys was talking on Mayday about Korean pilots. I think it was Korean pilots, but it could be a different group of people. But let's say just a random South Asian, wherever. Let's say Korean, because I think it was Korean. So they were saying that the culture in Korea was such that the co-pilot did not question the pilot, period. And it led to a bunch of crashes. And so one of the ways they changed things was that culture of you will not question your seniors was brought in. And like, that's a Western trope, I guess. That's like the second person can question the senior person in a Western configuration. But up until maybe it wasn't Mayday. Maybe it was, what's his name? Malcolm Gladwell. But I think it was actually Malcolm Gladwell now that I'm explaining the story. But regardless, the change happened, and it got to the point where the Korean pilots were able to question their senior pilots, and then the crashes stopped. But like something like that, right? If you can't figure that out, right? Maybe that's an advantage. If China can't figure that out, and then all of a sudden they're flying with these Top Guns, and one of the Top Guns goes, "Hey, Bill, don't do that." And they're like, "Oh, hold on a second. This is a breakthrough. This is mind blowing. Why did you question that?" Well, if I hadn't questioned that, we would have crashed. Gotcha. Fiercely writing notes. Is this a positive thing to be doing in the current, military configuration of the world, right? Like when you're staring down, when Alexa's saying that China and Russia are going to start a complete third world war, should we be training Chinese pilots in that? Like we might start a third world war, but we might not. We'd really like some training. I think we're busy. It seems strange to me, right? It seems very strange to me. Mr. Lee confirmed the Canadian security officials identifying themselves as Public Safety Canada employees had contacted a number of TFASA employees on August 24th to request that they stop working for China. Or stop working for the Chinese. He noted that the conversations are ongoing. However, he maintained that any suggestion that the company or its employees offer assistance in equipping foreign powers with advanced tactics, techniques, or procedures, or advanced technology is simply incorrect. It's like the Prime Directive, right? Like you can't go in there and just be like, "Oh, well, I mean, warp drive is super easy," right? Like all you have to do is this and this and this. Do you have any dilithium? Too many Star Trek references. Amazing Polly is talking about yesterday, I pointed out that Amazing Polly said that Andy Lee was suspect. I thought it was an interesting little kind of side thing, and there was a little Twitter drama. And now there's more Twitter drama. But the thing that raises my eyebrows is Andy Lee and other people are chiming in to call Amazing Polly crazy, right? They're using exactly the tactics you'd see used against people the mainstream media don't want you to listen to. Right? Calling names, you're crazy, not addressing the issue, not addressing the question. So here's what happened yesterday. The Jinggu, who is friends with Andy Lee, wrote a 3-tweet glowing review of Andy Lee. And Amazing Polly responded by saying, "Andy Lee got her Chinese friends to write me a 3-part tweet extolling her virtues. She must be really frightened that I can harm her huge, powerful reputation. Anyway, I failed to see how this proves that she's not getting info or direction from Israeli intelligence," which is the core of the problem. And Jinggu responds saying, "No one asked me to write anything. Anyone who knows a bit about the risk of taking on a large hostile foreign intelligence service in the world will know neither Andy Lee or any person on our team could possibly be frightened by your conspiracy theory." And that raised I thought that's eyebrow raising. So if you don't believe me, you're a conspiracy theorist. Well, now I'm just looking for proof. And it doesn't seem likely that no one asked you to say anything about this because you just, came across my posts. Weird, right? And then Andy Lee chimes in and says, the only thing that frightens me is your tenuous grasp on reality. And then somebody chimes in and says, well said. And I thought, that's not well said. That's concerning positioning, concerning gaslighting. And Ozzy says, boy, you guys are using all the textbook shill tactics or shill tricks in scripts, aren't you? You don't realize every move you make only confirms her suspicion to us all. Pulling the weeds is an art form, and she is a master at it. I mean, yeah. And I think that it's very concerning the way Andy Lee is responding to this. So if you're an Andy Lee watcher, and I mean, like, she doesn't really do a show. She works for Rebel, and she puts out tweets and tweet threads that get a lot of traction. So, I mean, it's interesting, the information she puts out. She grew really, really fast. And she has a team for support, and she's open about that. But also, it's not very clear if you're a casual watcher. Like, if you think that she's doing that all by herself, she's made clear before it's too much, and she doesn't. She shares things that other people put together. Like they work on stories together and put things together, right? It's like all of that work isn't being done by her, which is fine. Like, I'm not trying to denigrate her, but if there's questions of, who's giving you this information, is it Israeli intelligence? If it's Israeli intelligence, well, that changes the information, doesn't it? Because they have a vested interest in controlling the narrative just as much as the Canadian government does, right? So the whole thing is sus, to use Amazing Polly's words from yesterday. Let's talk. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful